This episode contains raw conversation about sexual assault. It also contains coarse language. Please use care when listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Recovery APN.
I like how you're accentuating the welcome there. You're growing in your pod hosting abilities. Introductions. My bad.
Hey.
Yeah.
A great episode today. Tiffany does an amazing job in talking and communicating about her experience, obviously before APN, but at APN. And it was just awesome. I think there are so many bits and pieces there that are going to be relatable to a lot of the listeners.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, hey, I'm coming in for one specific reason, but then once she was at APN, she discovered all these other areas where she could grow and kind of work on, being healthy. And I think our audience will really relate.
Yeah, what I found very interesting, and I think it's a common theme through a lot of the success stories we have, is the willingness. And her willingness to get help, number one, coming in for trauma, and then realizing that she had an issue with drinking and being okay with that and working on that as well.
Yeah, that could hold so many, and it does hold people back. So her open-mindedness and willingness are really indispensable in her recovery.
Yeah, and I guess the last piece that I thought was crucial and valuable to a lot of listeners is her experience with TMS.
Yeah. TMS, our family track, outpatient. There's so many ways that she dives down, kind of describing her experience.
Let's do it. Without further ado. Tiffany, welcome.
Sorry,
Thanks.
Tiffany. We're knuckleheads. We get lost sometimes.
It's great. It's fine.
It's great.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate you coming all the way from the East Coast.
Yeah.
How was that flight?
It was good. Flew to Denver and then over. Not short, but
yeah.
it was sweet.
Yeah, Vail's a great airport.
Yeah.
So what has it been like for you to? I know you've been back a few times since you went to treatment at APN, but like, has there been any new emotions or special emotions that come up every time you visit, like the Vail Valley?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I came out here was for the alumni retreat, and that was weird. Walking into these halls again, seeing my old, the outside of my old room and the media room and the classes that I learned and changed in. It was just a phenomenal experience. I took a step outside and went to the overlook or outlook or whatever we call it. I've already forgotten. And just saw the mountains and just soaked in all of the progress I made here. So the first time was surreal. Coming back this time was a little different because I'm coming back to tell my story, which is almost even more surreal. It's like 8 months into this journey of life. I'm still kicking it, and I have a lot to thank this place for. So it's a pretty good feeling.
Like excitement, fear, both, or like, what do you think? Like getting on the mic right now, like how does that feel?
It's I don't know how else to explain it except like surreal. Like maybe a little bit nervous, maybe excited, a feeling of success.
That's awesome.
But also like, wow, it's already been 8 months. How did that happen?
Goes
So
fast,
it's a little hard to wrap my mind all around.
Yeah.
How fast it's gone by, and and just comparing like where I was a year ago today versus now, like in completely two different spots.
Night and day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's an emotional roller coaster for sure.
It's like a flood of emotions. That's what everyone kind of describes. It's this, it's that. It's just like seeing the lodge, driving up the hill. You know what I mean? It's just everything comes back. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the dining hall, all the things.
Yeah. So what we typically do, we'll chat with our guest, and they'll talk about their experience kind of before APN and what ultimately led them to APN, if there was a defining moment or a series of events. And again, you can go as deep as you would like or as surface level. I want to make you feel as comfortable as possible when sharing your story. And then we'll jump into kind of your experience at APN. What you found to be very beneficial. If it was the relationships, if it was the community, if it was the team here at APN, whatever was that worked for you and whatever you felt, whatever made you happy and made your experience well. And then what your life is like now since you left APN.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, so let's take a dive in. Kind of what led you to APN in the first place?
Yeah, so I came here in June of 2022, so 8 months ago. And I came here for PTSD and anxiety, depression. Really, I had just gotten to a place in my life where I was desperate for change, desperate for freedom. I was chasing my worth in all of the wrong directions. Didn't know how to cope with life anymore on my own, and I was just desperate. So backstory to that was a traumatic sexual assault incident in 2018 by an officer. And then forward in 2022, I kind of like put it aside, and then 2020 came around, and I got a call from a reporter and investigator, and found out I was like one of at least 10 victims to this person. I was involved in this, big case that was getting ready to start. And so it brought all of these PTSD symptoms to light. And the things that I had just been kind of pushing down for 2 years were just all of a sudden there. And so it just, from 2020 to 2022, I just kind of went on a roller coaster. I sought out a therapist, but seeing a therapist 1 to 3 times a month really wasn't like hitting the surface, It was barely hitting the surface. And then I was in a relationship. I had some issues with that happen. And it just seemed like in the beginning of 2022, it was like the cherry was added to the sundae. And I couldn't cope on my own anymore. So I was drinking, I was using benzos as prescribed, not so much by the time I got here, and I just couldn't figure out how I was going to survive any longer without being drunk or using something to survive. And so I had like a trip planned to Hawaii and a trip planned to like family reunion and high school reunion, all of these things. And I was like, I need help now. I got to go now. So I canceled all my flights and came to APN. Took just a handful of Ativan to get me in my first day, but I got in. Yeah. So yeah, it was a rough, rocky couple of years. I mean, I threw all of my energy into work, and I still thrived in my life, my professional world, and did school, but internally I was just suffering.
I think it's so wild how long we can kind of stay in survival mode. Like, we are almost like hurting or dying for so long, but like with a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of Xanax, and just like unhealthy, like depression, anxiety, people can like hide out in the world for so long. And for you to kind of get to the realization from 2020 to 2022 and like, you know what, we got to take this step. Like, that's not easy. That's courageous. And like, it's inspirational to people, like, to say, hey, I need help, and I need to, because a lot of times like the house needs to burn down for me to get help. Right. So when it's an internal bottom, it's tougher to say, hey, I need to get help. So like, more power to you.
Yeah. I mean, externally, most people didn't know. When I called my boss and said, hey, I'm taking off work, I'm going to treatment for PTSD, it was like, wait, what? People were like, you have what? So no one really knew. I'd mastered that. But yeah, I mean, I knew I needed it for sure.
So how'd you find APN? Was it like a Google search, or did you know somebody?
Days of Googling. I mean, I was desperate, but I wanted the right place. You know, you have all these places to choose from, whether it's like one bases their healing off of like spirituality versus some seem cultish, or I don't know. There's all these different ones out there. And so it was hard. But I came across APN's website because I Googled rehabs or treatment centers in Colorado, because I just love Colorado. It always feels very peaceful when I come here. And I came across APN, and I checked out the podcast, and I was like, wow, this place sounds like it's really scientifically based. And I wanted a place that was scientifically based, that had a gym. That was a big thing. And a place where I felt like I could explore my spirituality without it being forced or controlled. And so that's why I chose APN.
That's awesome. What you mentioned the podcast. Which podcast was it? We kind of talked before the show, but it was one of Lana's Therapy Unboxed. What was the episode on?
Yeah, it was trauma bonds.
Okay.
So she talked about trauma bonds, and a lot of light bulbs went off in my head. I was like, oh, wow. And there was something about like generational trauma that she talked about. And I don't know if it was the same podcast or another one, but that really stuck out to me.
It's pretty cool that kind of was like a catalyst to getting you in the door here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love that.
Yeah.
No,
Where are you at?
It was funny. What comes to mind is when people decide to choose a treatment center, right? And this is like goes back to like my addict brain, where it says like, okay, like I need to pick like you think about the most ridiculous things that'll make you happy. Like yours, not so ridiculous. Like you just wanted a gym where you can go out. Yeah. Mine was, I remember distinctly how I chose APN was like, I was on the phone. It was a great fit, right? It had like what I needed for substance abuse. And then like I was talking to a few other ones. And then on the phone, I was like, hey, like,
what'd you ask?
Like, is it cool if I like smoke the Juul? And they were like, yeah, you just like have to bring closed cart. Like you can't like bring your own juice. Like you just have to buy it and be closed. I was like, I'm in, let's go.
That's all. Right? Yeah, it's
but
all
like you have like, and a lot of stories we heard, it's like those little things that like make you like peaceful and like almost like in your head you justify like this is a place, right? Like yes, like, I agree. I also like enjoy working out. I remember seeing like they had a lot of photos of like the boxing room we had. I was like amazing because I was into boxing at that time. I was like, this is like God telling me like this is a place to go. Juuls, boxing, like treatment, like amazing. But it's just funny how things work out.
How we justify it.
Yeah. But it's amazing. I'm happy that you found APN, and let's take a dive into kind of your experience at APN.
Yeah. So on that, I wanted free weights. When I would call centers, I would ask for free weights.
No universal machines.
Some people are like, what's free weights? I'm like, I can't nope.
Give me some dumbbells.
All right, so maybe yours is just as ridiculous as mine.
It's pretty ridiculous.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you smoke the Juul and can you do your free weights? Check.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Don't have a bench press, forget it. Yeah. So, my experience at APN, I mean, the first few weeks were rough. You know, you're coming in, you're stabilizing, you don't have your substance or really any escape. The only escape I had, luckily, was the gym. And I spent a lot of time in there, but it's rough. The first 3 weeks are rough, but there's a great group of people here all the time who want to help you and be on your side. And so that really helped. I got paired with a counselor that felt like we were a match made in heaven, you know. She knew how to read right through me. She called me out. She knew when I was paying attention and when I was like blocking everything out. She knew when I was like in another world before I knew that I was in the other world. Yeah. She would be like, Tiffany, stay with me. And it's weird. I sometimes still hear her voice. Like I'll be like journaling or something and I'll hear her voice be like, Tiffany, stay with me. She told me that would happen. It's kind of weird. It's real. I'm like, okay.
Who was it?
Katie.
Oh, shout out Katie.
Yeah. So shout out to Katie. She is straight and direct, and that's what I needed. I needed somebody to call me out when I needed that. So it was awesome. The classes are great. I feel like they were adequate in providing me the skills that I needed to be successful after I left here. I had plenty of opportunity to practice my skills here too, and so that was good as well. I did TMS, which I felt like significantly helped with my anxiety and my sleep issues. Definitely helped with my like hypervigilance that came with the PTSD.
Can you quickly for the audience explain like TMS, like TMS for dummies, right? You know, kind of deal.
Yeah. So basically you put this fancy little helmet on and you get your brain mapped out. And then for, oh my goodness, is it like 45 to 60 days, I think, where you go every Monday through Friday, every day for about 30 to 45 minutes. You wear this helmet and it basically balances out the electromagnetic fields in your brain. And I don't understand all the science behind it, but it's supposed to help with PTSD, depression, anxiety, addiction, any symptoms you're having from trauma. And I thought it was like kind of crazy at first, but it worked. I mean,
that was my next question. You saw results.
Yeah.
Well, I guess How were you introduced to TMS? Like, were you aware of TMS before you came to APN, or was someone at the lodge saying you would be a great candidate, and how were you explained it?
Yeah, I had never heard of it, honestly. I came here and I did the trauma track, and I remember I had an assessment with the team. We all have a medical provider who makes the best decisions for our own treatment, so that was really helpful. And I had a consult, and I was open to it. So, I said, let's give it a try. And so it was good.
Yeah. Being open-minded, super, and willing to try different things. That's a big part of recovery, whether it's mental health or substance abuse, trying different things, what works for me kind of deal.
Yeah. And that was the really cool thing about APN is it offers you all of those treatment modalities. You have the spiritual aspect if you want to engage that. You have the TMS, the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, massage. You have all these different avenues to add into your treatment, which was really cool for me. I didn't know that I wanted to go explore any spirituality while I was here, but it was available. Yeah. So I had that option. So it was that was helpful. In that,
what about I think we talked about this yesterday in a show, but group therapy, the idea of group therapy versus individual therapy. Had you ever been in a group therapy setting, and what did you see out of that surprised you?
I had a group therapy session early in college, but nothing to the extent that I had here. It was a phenomenal experience to be able to have a group of people that I could grow to trust and come and discuss what I was going through at APN every morning. Every morning you have your process group at 9 a.m., 9:30, I can't remember anymore. But anyways, it's in the morning. And it's 2 hours where you get to just talk about what you're going through and process. And I still talk to some of the people from my process group. I saw one last night who's up here as well. And you build this bond that you don't expect. You get to know people at a deeper level than you expect.
That's awesome.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and Andy said it before, but when people come to the lodge and are willing to make a change and have the unknown of what that change is going to be, it always turns out to be valuable. And I think coming in and whether deciding to do TMS or doing HBOT or never being vulnerable in a group setting, or going to the gym as frequent or less frequent, or doing doing a workout class or yoga, whatever it is, it allows you to open up new avenues that you never saw before, and it helps ultimately find yourself and center yourself.
Yeah, I walked in here ready for change, and I think that that's a big thing. Some people are forced or they're doing it for other people, but I walked in here wanting it for me. And so I think that's why I'm still successful now, why my skills are still being practiced and I still see them because I was ready for it.
Yeah, one of the big themes, again, when I say recovery, right, it's not just, I think I know my brain just talks about substance abuse, but it's about mental health as well, but action and taking accountability and getting my feet moving, not just wishing to change and hoping I change. What am I doing, right? And trying therapy and trying TMS and spirituality and yoga and all these different things. So I love the fact that that's what you're describing. Hey, if you want to come here and do all these different things and find out what works for you, the sky's the limit, really, which is, again, inspirational.
Yeah, letter writing. I had never even thought about doing that. And that turned out to be one of the most healing things for me. Just to write letters to my addictions or people or whatever. It just worked. So there's all these different ways of treatment and processing that they offer here, and it's good. It's good to be able to try those different things and figure out what works for you.
It's great to hear.
When you came here, and you mentioned that you came for the more for trauma, did you focus, and you mentioned earlier about struggling with drugs and alcohol, during that episode of dealing with your trauma, did you work on any of that while you were here as well, the substance side?
Yeah, so that's the crazy thing that I did not expect. I came here thinking I just have this PTSD and I need to fix that and move on. I never thought I'm going to leave here and not drink again until a few weeks in. I remember my therapist, Katie, had asked me, why are we still circling this? Like, you've made really good decisions and you've made a lot of peace with a lot of layers. And, you know, I came in here with and made peace with more traumas than I even thought I still had to deal with, you know? And so from my childhood to divorce in my early 20s, just everything. And she's like, why alcohol? Why are you still circling this one? And that's when it kind of hit home for me. Clearly, it has enough weight in my mind, and my mind is able to lie to me enough if I'm still circling whether or not I can drink again or not. And so I, you know, at the time I was like, I don't know if I'm drinking because of the trauma, if the trauma is resolved, can I drink again? And I mean, it just got to the point where it's like, I mean, I could try it again, sure, but what good does it do for me? I had another client who was here told me, write down everything bad that has happened to you while drinking, and or bad things that you've done while drinking. And then pretend somebody you loved or cared about gave you that list. What would you tell them? So I remember one day in one of our classes, I was writing down this list, and Aaron Kennedy called me out. What are you over there writing, you know? And I was like, I'm writing the bad things that I've done while drinking. And she's like, well, why don't you read them? So I started to read a few, and I was like, oh my goodness, if somebody gave me this list, I would tell them to never drink again. So it was a pretty easy decision from that moment on. Before that, I was thinking, I've got this case of Quintessa wine at home. I got to go finish that, and then I'll reassess that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, that's my brain lying to me again.
And again, so simple, but something so powerful. And A, writing it down, and then B, like saying it out loud. And it's like, holy shit, what did I do? You know, like I definitely can relate to that experience, 1,000%.
Yeah, and if my little sister had told me she had done or had done any of those things, I would be like, don't drink again.
Yeah, disappointed.
So, yeah, it's not good for you. Yeah. So I had to kind of take my own advice and swallow it.
And that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
You know, that's like almost like a shocking realization, because for the longest period of time, like you've decided that I'm struggling because of trauma, nothing else. And now it's come to your attention, and now it's like you say it out loud and then have to believe it too to take action on it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just so convinced it was just the trauma. Like, I had to, in order before I could even, like, have a family or kids, I needed to heal from trauma. Like, I had all these theories in my head. I'll heal from trauma and I'll be fine. But, I mean, it was so much more than that. And having this journey of sobriety come out has been a great way to regain power in my life in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, about trauma, which I think we can all relate to, is I can work on them. I can you know, like discover what's going on, why it's going on, but I don't just heal instantly. You know, like, yes, there is something freeing about identifying it and what's going on, but then there's work. It's almost like taking a car apart. And it's like, all right, there's the transmission is a problem. Well, I still need to put the car back together and put the transmission back. And that's kind of like what treatment is identifying those traumas, working on them a little bit, and now I'm back, and now I have to still work on them. Does that make sense? Or do you relate to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like APN gave me the skills I needed to start my mental health journey. Yeah. And then I was able to go home, get back into my real world. And I've done IOP, and I'm now still doing some OP groups and still using the APN therapist. Luckily, I've been able to continue on with it for several months after, which has been awesome. But it's every day, you know? Like, I still have the pieces that I'm putting together, and the question is, am I ever done? I don't think so. I don't think we ever have it figured out. But a million times better than I was a year ago, and I'm way better than I ever imagined.
That's great.
So I think, you know, you have to keep working on yourself every day. It's a journey. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, like, I am very grateful that I have to be part of these episodes and this podcast, because this is I get to learn every day, and I get to learn things that maybe I didn't learn at APN, or I didn't learn in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I get to learn from others. And it's like, to your point, like, I don't think you ever stop learning about yourself, or just stop learning about this disease or mental health, because there's so many different avenues for it.
Yeah.
So I commend you for continuing to work on yourself, and with the telehealth program, I think it's great that, like, the virtual side of it, where it's like you still can receive treatment from your house or your apartment, wherever you live.
Yeah, I was skeptical of that, honestly. I was trying to find another one, but I just couldn't find one that felt right. So I was like, well, I have this APN IOP virtual program, so I'm just going to do that. And I'm really glad I did. Yeah. Like, there is so much healing and support you can feel, even though it's virtual. I actually think it might be better for me.
Yeah. I love the aspect too, because I think we all, I know working in this field and for myself, hey, I'll do 60 days, I'll do 30 days, and then I'm done. Right. And we all kind of like, that's all I'm willing to do. Right. I'm so busy. My life's so important. I can only give 35, 40 days, whatever it is. And then to say, hey, to do IOP for a couple months and then step down and do OP and still like that. And the data proves that people get great results when they're engaged in long-term care like that. So like, again, that's like, what an example of like what it's supposed to look like. And now you got great results.
Yeah. I took almost a month off actually out of APN before I started IOP. And as soon as I started IOP, it was like the pieces I was missing and like any little stressors I was having, they were resolved. So I would say that like starting IOP or some kind of treatment plan after leaving here immediately is the smartest thing to do. Not to wait, but I mean, it was fine.
But you started, like a lot of people, hey, I'll start next week, I'll start next month. And 2 years go by and they never started. So it's good that you did it.
Yeah.
Outside of kind of the IOP and OP groups, what other tangible things are you doing to like help your recovery?
Yeah, so being more vulnerable. Before, like I said, I just kind of hid everything. So being honest about what's going on with my friends that I do have. Whenever they found out that I was coming here, there were a few of them who were like, why didn't you talk to us? Like, we know you, but yet we didn't know this. So I think just being honest with the people who care about me and finding sober friends. I've had to adjust some of my groups that I hang out with and things like that. It's like we're all people and we're all on our own journey, but there's just like a difference between being sober and not, and people who are understand it a little better. So I've had to put in a little effort to find that sober community for sure. And then just exercising my skills in general life, like whether it's work or relationships or friendships, has been really important. Before APN, I didn't know how to put my needs first or how to listen to my body or my intuition. And now I know how to do those things. I hear my intuition, I hear my body telling me what to do and what it needs, and I listen to it. I can set boundaries. No, it's not easy, but life gives you a lot of opportunities to practice setting boundaries, and I keep practicing it. Yeah. And then I have this OP group, I had the IOP group to come back and like talk about those failures or successes with, you know? And so it's really helpful. As far as like groups and stuff, I have checked out like local AAs. Like I said, I'm still doing like 3 groups of OP a week. So that's quite a bit right now. But yeah, I think it's all about just like finding your circle that you can feel safe and vulnerable in.
You talked about writing letters to yourself when you're in treatment. Do you do any journaling or anything like that now?
I do. I still do it.
That's cool.
I feel like that's vital to my success. Whenever I'm stressed or extra anxious, I know I need to sit down and journal.
And is that a new skill? Like, were you journaling before you came to APN? Or is that something?
Not really. I mean, I had tried once in a while, but not really. It's a skill that I have to use. Before it was like something maybe I should start journaling. Let me journal like once every 4 months, Now
it's your routine.
But now it's a routine. Yeah, it's at least a few times a week. I need to sit down and journal, like just to think through my thoughts. And
so simple, because we get to being in this, like living in this world. People ask you questions, like people that aren't in mental health or substance. Hey, what do you do? And like the idea, or even people that are that are in AA or in rehab. Hey, why don't you try journaling? People are like, well, how is that? Like, what's that going to do? And it's like, well, have you ever tried it? And like, no. I'm like, well, how about you try it? And you give them an idea, and people rarely think that's going to work or make it like be a big deal, and usually it could be like life-changing, kind of like you're describing.
Yeah, it's weird.
It is real weird, but it works.
Yeah definitely.
So going back to your telehealth, which therapists are you working with in those groups?
Yeah, I'm working with Amy. Amy Davies. Yeah, and it has been phenomenal. We're doing EMDR, and so that's been something that has been really beneficial for me, putting back together some of those pieces we were talking about earlier. Like, you know, I came out of APN. I did not do EMDR while I was here. I was working on all of the other things, and we just didn't get to that point.
Yeah.
So being able to go right into that with her has been really helpful. And the group facilitators are great as well. I have, Rebecca is one of them off the top of my head. That
What's the group topic? Is it on something specific?
She has the
boundaries,
trauma bonds group. And then I have the codependency group, who's led by Amy. And then I have the sober living group. Yeah, living sober.
Shout out Telehealth. That's great. Yeah.
And so it's been really great.
So EMDR, can you explain that to our audience? Like what that looks like? What in a session is it specifically for trauma? Like how can you describe that for us?
So it can be used for a variety of things, but I'm using it mainly for trauma. So basically, first you have a safe place in your head, in your head, obviously it's in your head that you've created very vividly, and then you have a safe container, and you go into this. You need to be able to access this place whenever you get too overwhelmed or whatever. But what my therapist does is she will bring up like we'll start talking about a traumatic incident, something that is coming up in my nightmares or like, you know, whatever it is, it's bothering me. And then she'll ask me questions to probe like more and get my brain going. And the entire time we're getting my brain activated in that area, I'm tapping, either tapping because it's virtual. So I'm either tapping myself or I watch like a ball go across the screen. And so that sensory use of those different senses seems to like activate. I don't know exactly how it works, but like activates parts of your brain and it further engages you to process.
Yeah. So it activates both sides of the brain, right? Some people do it with light, some people do it with tapping, right? But it gets both sides kind of like firing at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I'm able to like really pull out these memories and these weird details from these traumatizing memories. And it's crazy how my brain is able to pull those details out while I'm doing EMDR.
Yeah.
So it's really good for processing.
And again, for our audience, like, so my experience too with it was like, if you rated an experience like, hey, 1 to 10, 10 being the most traumatic event, before EMDR, it's a 10 or it's a 9, right? This is pretty bad. After a couple EMDR sessions, usually that same event is a 3 or a 4. Does she ever give you like a number scale to work with it, or do you notice it not carrying as much power or weight?
Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, whenever I was talking to you about EMDR, I was thinking of a traumatic memory that I recall details of, and I pulled it up in my head, you know, thinking about it now, and I'm not like, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So that's evidence that I processed it
that it's,
and moved through it. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And it's just very special to see like how open and honest you are. And like I remember being here while you were in treatment and seeing you and seeing like you could just see how happy people are in their faces when they come back, and you look incredible. And I want to give you kudos to all the hard work that you put in, because it is a challenging journey, right? And you did put in a lot of hard work, and it's not easy. So you should definitely be proud of yourself.
Thanks.
I love the fact that you took a bunch of different, like, so, hey, it's therapy, or it's this. Hey, it's a little bit of TMS. It's a little therapy. It's journaling. It's this, and working out, right? And made it your recovery plan. I think that's super powerful.
Yeah, you really have to address all areas. I mean, because it is so easy to come out of treatment and find another way to escape yourself. That's the reality. Like trading one addiction in for another, one maladaptive coping mechanism for another. And I have to constantly be aware of that. You know, like I found myself signing up for too many classes while I'm working, and I was like, oh nope, Tiffany, that's an old Tiffany pattern. We don't do that anymore. So,
but like, again, simple, but recognizing that there's so much power in that.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And I mean, life's not a race, and your mental health is important. So making time for it is what helps you be successful.
I know the free weights were a caveat for you coming here. Was there any other aspect of APN that was like surprisingly fun or helpful for you?
I mean, one thing that sticks out to me is, well, there's several things, but one of the things is the activities. Having the, like, being able, I was like, I'm not going to be able to get a pedicure or my nails done the entire time I'm there, you know, I'm going to come out looking like a rag. But no, we get to do those things. Like, yes, they're monitored and all of those things, but you still get to live. And so that was helpful. We did, like, horseback riding and things like that. So being able to take advantage of those opportunities made me feel more like a human, you know? And get those necessary breaks from processing, because it's hard work. Yeah. I mean, it's really not even just 8 to 10 hours. It's like 24 hours a day. You're processing and you're doing assignments and you're talking about your trauma and you're thinking about it again and again. So yeah, having that. And then I think it was just so nice to have the the safe space to incorporate religion as much as or as little as I wanted to. I really liked the science-based treatment modalities that were encouraged here. Growing up super religious, having that open platform for me to be able to pick what I want to believe and redefine who I am with, you know, the 4 agreements was really beneficial. So, and you know, re-identifying myself in a way that made me feel good.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess before we wrap up, I'm always curious to know what it was like in what we call like your family systems, and how was it? Did you engage in any family therapy while you were here, or did they support you when you were coming and when you went home?
Yeah, so I did engage in family therapy, and I will say I did not want to do it at first. But everybody else is doing it, and it seemed like a great idea because they're like, oh, you know, me and my mom are doing better. Me and my dad are doing better. And so my family didn't really believe like they thought it was kind of weird that I was coming here. They didn't really believe in therapy, and my parents. And so but they were open to therapy. I started with my mom, and it did give us a space to work through some things that we really needed to work through. And a place that provided me a way to set boundaries, and then rather her getting like hurt by it or something, we had the therapist there to moderate it and explain, you know, what's going on and be able to answer her questions. And so, yeah, I actually just finished family therapy like the first week of January. We continued on with it. My dad joined a few times. My mom and I did it mostly. But yeah, it was super great.
So that dynamic from like, let's say a year ago till now, what is it? Is it a lot healthier now, or is it obviously it's still a process, but it's gotten a lot healthier?
Yeah, much healthier. I mean, my mom actually is setting some boundaries in her own relationships. So she had never really been to therapy, and now she's learned what a boundary means just in these family therapy sessions, and she's learned how to not only set some in her own life, but respect some of mine. And I mean, like I said before, they didn't really believe in therapy. And now my dad is saying, wow, like you've changed so much. This was really good for you. Like he told me a few weeks ago, I was skeptical of that place at first, but you know, seeing you change and how much happy you are and how you're able to choose. He said something like, choose you and put your needs first.
Never thought your dad would say that, right?
Yeah. Like, he's like, you're doing really well. So, I mean, that's cool. Like, sometimes I've always been a good student. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I should be 20 steps ahead, or, you know, and then someone's like, oh, I can tell you're so much different, or you've done this. And I'm like, wow, you're right. Like, I have made a lot of progress. And I mean, like I said, I owe it all to APN providing me the place to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's incredible. So if you'd like to view other podcasts that we've had, whether it be from season 2 or season 1, you can visit apn.com/podcast, and they're all there. You could watch them or download them on Spotify, Apple. You could also email us if you want to get in contact with us. Our email is pod@apn.com. And please follow us on all of our socials, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Our handle is APN Lodge. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe.